Do you find yourself constantly checking to see if things are done right, only to face eternal disappointment? Or maybe you've just delegated tasks instead of delegating responsibilities. In today's episode of the podcast, we'll look at how you can change that and get people to take true ownership of the outcome of their work.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Upscale Business Podcast. My name is Arena. I'm here with Kirk.
Hello, everyone.
We talked about a couple of challenges that your clients have been facing recently.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm working with a lot of guys on the moment with this, and it's the difference between delegating a task and delegating a responsibility.
Yep.
And the guys that are really struggling or really need this right now are the guys that have typically the non-billable staff. So you're talking like admin, you're talking operations managers and the like, because quite often we see incidentally people set themselves up for this environment that it's like a vortex of micromanaging. And what we've been working on is how do we make a conscious effort to delegate the responsibility and not just delegate the task. The symptom of delegating just the task is that you will probably, if you're like, oh, I don't really know, am I delegating task or responsibility? I think I've delegated the responsibility, but maybe I've just delegated the task. And I guess the litmus test there is, do you find yourself like checking what other people have done or checking to make sure it's been done? And most of the time you're probably disappointed that it's not, and you're finding all these errors, and that's building a lot of frustration in what you do. That's probably a really clear indicator that you've delegated the task without delegating the responsibility, because the person is just doing what you've asked them to do on the task component, and they're not held accountable to the outcome of what the task is. So they're doing the output, doing the thing without worrying about the outcome. So they're like, oh, if I do the things, all good, my boss will be happy, blah, blah, blah. But if they're not connected to the outcome of that, then it's really hard for you to fully delegate and actually free up time and space, because you just find yourself still holding the responsibility for that. So you are always checking to make sure it's been done right and all of the rest of the jazz. And so what we've come up with is a little strategy that helps people to navigate that. And it's not that if you do find yourself in a position where you've delegated tasks, or maybe the responsibility hasn't been taken on board yet, that's all good, because we can just adjust that whole perspective really quite simply. So what we found working is we get clear on what the outcome is. So for an admin role, for example, we would set up a series of expectations or KPIs around what the role looks like and what are the key deliverables, like what are the key outcomes that we're looking for.
What are some examples in that space?
Yeah, so a really clear one would be, let's just say we've got an admin who's handling inbound phone calls. We might have an expectation that the number of inbound phone calls that don't get answered, that goes to voicemail per week, is 3 or less.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll communicate that and just be like, hey, this is the expectation around this. It could also be, reply time on emails. Our expectation is our average reply time on emails is less than 15 minutes, for example. Yeah. And so we have these sort of metrics that we hold ourselves accountable to. So
instead of saying, take the phone calls, which is basically delegating the task.
Yep.
You say, this is a metric that we want to hit every single week. Only like three phone calls going to voicemail, not being answered straight away. So as an admin role, you will then have to think, how do I actually make that happen?
Exactly.
And what do I do if I'm on the phone and the phone rings? Like, how do I deal with this?
Yeah. So it gets them to think more about how do I get the result as opposed to how do I do the thing that I've been asked to do. Yeah.
I like that.
And then what we found super successful was to actually get the person to self-report. And this is the real big step for business owners, because if you don't delegate the responsibility, you hold that responsibility. So you'll always have to check, which means you haven't really freed up that much space off your plate. And so to get to that point very clearly, what we've done is we've picked a timeline for these businesses to be like, okay, what we're thinking about doing is by the end of next month, we're going to delegate the responsibility of this role over to you. You've spent a few months here. You're learning the craft, learning how to do the tasks. Now I need you to really step up and take on the responsibility. What that looks like is I won't be checking anymore. I won't be checking things. I won't be finding things. I'm like, so that doesn't mean I won't help you. But if you need help, I'm expecting you to come to me. I'm not coming to you to see if you need help.
Yep.
So there's a big transition here between like feeling like there's always someone there to catch all my mistakes and being like, hey, if I start to get behind or overwhelmed, I actually have to proactively reach out and go, hey, can I get some help here?
How has that been received with your clients' admin teams?
I guess there's a bit of like hesitation at first, but the way we sort of dissolve that is to give a very clear structure around like what it looks like. And where we got to was a really simple process. We created, like, I've done this for a few guys in different roles, like an admin management report. That the expectation is that the admin management report is completed and in the business owner's inbox at 2 p.m. on a Friday afternoon.
Yep.
And that report is a reflection of how the admin outcomes have been achieved this week. So like I said before, I had the KPI about missed calls through to voicemail. Now, if we have an expectation that it's 3 or less,
yep,
and then the admin's job on a Friday afternoon is to self-report and go and find that data, if they realize that, okay, this week I've had 7 calls that go to voicemail, they're aware that that's not where the standard is or where the expectation lies. And they're also aware that because they've had to fill the report out and send it to you.
Yep.
And so from a business owner's perspective, it self-manages to an extent. Like that they're aware, they know that you don't even have to say anything. You do have to say something if it's week after week after week like that, but the simple report. So we change what we expect from our employees. And what that saves us is having to check all of those things ourselves. We get them to self-report, and then it's all there, it's all clear. And if we check it and we find it hasn't hit the mark, then we have to have a conversation with that person to bring the standard up to where it needs to be.
Yep.
So there might be 10 different components of the role that you check each week or each day that you might find an area of issue or mistake that you're constantly feeding that back. And all of that negative energy and emotion really takes you away from the productivity and creativity that you can create throughout your week.
I really like this because you put some of the responsibility back into the staff members' hands, but they can then also communicate challenges really quickly and really well because it might actually not be anything in their power.
Yeah.
So, for example, inbound like phone calls.
Yeah.
If you stop your ad spend and most of your phone calls come from your Google ad spend, but you bring it down or you dial it back or you stop it altogether, then how is your admin supposed to answer phone calls? So it's really good to have like a max and a minimum, like have some metrics that you track regularly and have someone else track that within their role as well because it all flows in together.
Definitely. And with these simple forms that we built, it's got the KPI and the metric and then a space for comments.
Yep.
So if, for that example, like, hey, we've missed 7 calls and they've gone to voicemail, we might have a comment there saying there was a crazy wild storm on Monday night and Tuesday morning the phones went ballistic and we just couldn't keep up.
Yep. If it's not happening every week, that's very, very good explanation and you can see what happened.
And as a business owner, you don't have to check things. You just get the report at 2 p.m. on a Friday and it's like, that's how the admin role has been fulfilled. And it's not the micro, it's the outcome.
Yep.
It's all about it's not the individual calls, it's the outcome or the overarching component of what their role amounts to.
When do you think there's a really good opportunity to delegate a task rather than a responsibility? I get that delegating the responsibility, perfect. I just sometimes think it won't always. How do you identify when is it better to keep some of it?
Keep the responsibility.
If you wanted it.
Yeah, I think it comes down to your personal preference and it comes down to where you're at with your own, business and style because some people find it very difficult to release control.
Yes.
And so there'll be people that want to still look over the shoulder.
Yep.
And we just want to make sure that we're not flirting with the lines of micromanaging because that's ineffective for everyone. But if you want to be more in control, you can be in control without being a micromanager, but we've got to also be conscious of the fact that if you do find yourself as a control freak, that is a precursor to accidentally overstepping and micromanaging a lot of different spaces, which will just trash your efficiency individually and also probably not be the best outcome for the team either.
Yeah, I think as a business owner, you might want to keep some of your key responsibilities that your genius space lies in, where you're not quite ready to delegate that part of it. But if you have sorted everything else out, that's a really good way to sort of play on your strengths.
Yeah.
Like keep the things that are actually playing within your skills that you're really, really, really good at, and delegate the responsibilities for the rest. If you've taken something valuable away from this episode, make sure you hit the like button. If you want to hear more of us, make sure you follow along and you don't miss any episodes. We're going to be here a lot. We love recording. So give us a bit of a follow, bit of a shout out. Thank you for listening.